Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen, and we got a good show on tap for you here tonight. We're doing the Sunday conversation on a Tuesday. Been a crazy couple days. We had ourselves at one hell of a snowstorm on Sunday, had a little bit of technical difficulties. We're back here on Tuesday, and of course, we'll have our guests, as always, Harry, the Pitt guru himself, and Eric Dudek out of the Bird Cave. We'll go over a number of different topics tonight. Obviously, Pitt finds a way to win a game tonight here versus Wake Forest, 80-76. We'll talk about that here tonight. Also, too, the debacle around Pitt basketball. Even though we have a win here tonight, Pitt is now 9-12 on the season. We'll certainly go around the horn talking to Harry and Eric and getting their thoughts on a potential change and how that could potentially help the program, or does it make it worse? We'll hear their thoughts on that. Also, Mike McCarthy, the Greenfield native, is on his way home. The Pittsburgh Steelers make an announcement and have their press conference today. Mike McCarthy was pretty choked up when it came to talking about what it means to coach the Pittsburgh Steelers, and as he said, what it was like to now coach the team that he wore the colors on when he came home from Mercy Hospital, when he was born at Mercy Hospital, which is truly a great story. And we'll talk about that hire and really, is it the same as a Mike Tomlin hire, with him having a little bit lesser of a winning percentage, or it's an offensive mind? This makes sense. We'll talk about that as well. And last but not least, we'll talk about the Pitt football schedule that just dropped yesterday. A number of great games on the schedule and 3 weeknight games. We'll talk about why that could potentially be a really good thing with the TV viewership and the payouts in the ACC. As always, guys, the show is sponsored by Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102. Of course, you go in there, plenty of different selections, your heavier beers, your lighter lagers, anything you need in there. If they're having a party, a tailgate, they have everything that you need. Bill and Alan are truly two of the best, easy people to talk to. Make sure you guys go in there and talk about Pitt football and, of course, also now Pitt basketball. Make sure you guys go talk to them. They are truly the best. Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102. Next up, Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson, an attorney on your side. Call them today at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Again, you guys get to meet Brian Thompson at the spring game at the Pitt meet and greet. We'll certainly talk about another thing about that. The Pitt meet and greet might have another date coming up here, and we'll talk about that tonight as well. But Brian Thompson, truly one of the best, and the greatest thing about him is that unlike the larger law firms, he cares about you, the individual, and the case that you bring to him. He'll guide you through the process from beginning to end to make sure you get the results that you need in that case. Brian has a great family, comes from a great family, and does a tremendous work and volunteering in the community. Make sure you go see Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson. Call them today at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. And of course, as we always say, the show is free. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button down below, the like button. Make sure you guys go follow Eric and Harry on all of their platforms, and they'll make sure to tell you where to go follow them at tonight. And of course, like we said, the show is free, so don't be a hoe. Share the show. And to bring him on the stage now, the Pitt guru himself and Eric. Gentlemen, we have survived the storm. We have survived Armageddon. There may have been a lot of shoveling going on, especially where I'm at and getting people out of their parking spaces. Eric, you were working today as well.
Oh,
How was the snowstorm for you, brother?
It sucks, bro. My wife was already sitting there like, I need an Airbnb like immediately to get down to Florida or something. But yeah, I had to go shovel. My daughter went back to school at RMU, and they did a pretty piss poor job shoveling a parking lot. So I had to go shovel her a parking space. So that was unexpected tonight. But such being a parent, man, it's all good.
Harry, how did you survive it, brother? I know it was a crazy couple days. Obviously, we couldn't even do the show on a Sunday night because I was having issues after the power and the Wi-Fi got knocked out. But how did you survive it, sir?
I got to tell you, I work out on a regular basis. I feel like I'm in great shape. And then I did, I snowblow my house, and I did 4 or 5 other neighbors, and I did it 3 times. And then I shoveled. And man, you work different muscles, and I'm not getting any younger, and I couldn't walk the next day. So, but yeah, hopefully we're past it. I hope it's gone now. I just can't. I need some heat, man. I can't wait. It's too cold out there. And then we were able to celebrate Mr. Dudek's birthday over the weekend as well.
We
His
did.
wife Nikki is the MVP of the weekend. She threw an amazing party. So happy birthday, Eric! And like I said, so that was good. The storm was bad. That's my report.
Yep. Again, happy birthday to the Berg Cave, the man himself, Eric, turning 50 years old, the Big 50, which is a really good number. Always a really good one to celebrate. And of course, his wife Nikki did a hell of a job in putting that event together. Of course, Lou, happy birthday. So we appreciate that, Lou, and appreciate everyone tuning in here tonight as we got a bunch of stuff to talk about.
Hey, JJ, real quick, and I told you I'm a man of my word. I told you I was going to do this because this man, everybody, wants to kill me. JJ wants to kill me. He brought over a little birthday present for me.
Oh, yeah. You got to do one tonight.
And this man over here wants to kill me. By the way, you must have got 93 points of something. You get like a – geez, oh, man, what do you got? Like a advantage card at the liquor store there, brother. You got 93 points there.
It's the ranking when it comes to some of the liquor. They said that is one of the best. I asked the guy at the front desk. I said, hey, going to a 50th birthday party, need something good. He goes, do you want to knock the guy on his ass? I said, hey, bury him. he gave me that. He gave me that.
Well, listen, I'm a man of my word, so I'm not doing a huge shop. I'm going to drink it for the first time. And I got the Gatorade, so I ain't drinking a brews tonight. But I told JJ, I was like, I'm going to do the first sip on your
give us a review. You got to give us a review, too.
I'm not much of a whiskey guy. I mean, I have it here and there, so I'll give you a bit of a review. But here we go, down the hatch, and I might grow a third ear with this. We'll see. Ooh. Brother, that's smooth.
Really?
I could do that.
The guy didn't lie to me then. I like it. My man. I'll have to see him.
Smooth, my man.
I would encourage Eric to just keep drinking. If he soils himself, that'll double the ratings for the show. I'm just throwing it out there. Eric, just keep throwing him down, bud. That's all.
You know what? Hell with it. Just go. No.
No.
Listen, I mean, if I were to do that on a scale like the beer scales and everything, man, that's like an 8.2, man.
Dude, that's good.
I'm gonna, you know what? I mean, listen, that bottle of whiskey is gonna last me a while here, but I will actually go out and get that again myself. Because I've got, you know what? Actually, I've also received a few thanks to Pitt Gurus, and then there's another one. I got some gift cards for the liquor store. Guy's going to turn me into a raging alcoholic over here.
Turn you into an alcoholic, exactly.
So I might be buying myself a second bottle of that, but appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Perfect. And of course, Yinzerall, welcome to the 50 Club at the Bird Cave. You'll be feeding that liquor for 3 days now.
Yes, I will. Yes, I will. 100%. That's why I only took a little shot, but.
Exactly.
Appreciate it, everybody.
Well, to get into it here, as I know people are certainly talking about it in the comment section. Of course, if you want to get your comment above everybody else's, certainly use the super chat button down below to get a question to Eric, myself, and Harry. But first up, Pitt basketball finds a way to win here tonight against Wake Forest, 80-76. But they are currently 9-12 on the season. Probably at this point. You know, if they find a way to win today, but they're certainly down there with Boston College at this point. Really want to start with Harry on this one. You know, we've talked about it numerous times. Eric and I certainly talked about it last week, that a potential change is really going to need to be made. And I'm really on board with it now because it's year 8. We're seeing the same results. We're seeing 10-plus missed layups. It's different when it comes to resources and recruiting, where I agree with a lot of people that Pitt didn't really have the resources for, Jeff Capel's first really 7 years. But when you can't complete easy stuff, free throws in college basketball, layups in college basketball, just normality of offense in college basketball, I think there can be problems. Harry, do you think that a change should be made, and what are your initial thoughts on it?
So any Pitt fan that knows me knows that I've been very positive and I've been a hype man. It's hard for me to go negative. Let me say this. From 1999 to 2003, I saw what good looked like. And that was when Ben Hallen came in and transformed the program. Yeah. And as I've said this before, my brother's a Hoya. My brother's name is on the School of Business at Georgetown, Policy and Finance. And I will never forget when Julius Page, and I talked to Julius about a year ago about this, slammed the ball over Ruben Boom J, and that was the start of something special. And then we transitioned to Janie Dixon with Slice Rorson eating up New York. And so I saw what good looked like: a system, relentless defense, incredible passing, selflessness. I don't see any of that at the moment. And I've really, really tried to give Capel the benefit of the doubt. We're not at Kevin Stallings era level of bad. That was probably the worst I've ever seen. And I can fully disclose this now. That staff called me on a regular basis, Dan Cage and all of them.
Yeah.
And I became a suicide prevention hotline guy. I mean, it was that bad. This team is competitive, but not good. And we've seen too much of this. And I'm exhausted with it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, and I hate to talk like this, but I am a Pitt fan, and what we're looking at is unacceptable. The other thing that bothers me, if you look tonight, I understand the weather, but the Pete has become a coffin again. Mm-hmm. And it isn't to the point where, like Stallings, they would announce him and people would boo. That was embarrassing.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're looking at this is year 8. It's just hard to believe we've had one magical season. And looking at the roster, there's some young talent, and maybe if you match it up with what's coming in next year, but I'm exhausted. And I'm just talking from a personal standpoint. I really think it's time for a new era. Now, let me say this. If, and that's a big if, he stays, and we have 3 transformative recruits coming in, the question is, I don't care how much talent you're putting on the floor, I don't see that there's great coaching in place. Yeah. So now, if he does stay, so my opinion, you're asking me, I think it's time for a change. Get a good, young, aggressive college mind in. You could change basketball. You could turn it around in a year with NIL money. Yep. But let me say this. If he is retained, and that is a very questionable if at this point, I tell him, you have 1 year. You make the tournament or you're gone. There's no confusion here. But that being said, because of the 6 years, maybe out of the 8 of futility, they did get hosed the year after. They should have gone to the bench. I mean, to the NCAA, excuse me. I saw that someone commenting, I mentioned the bench. If there was 2 years that were competitive, kind of magical. So 6 years of futility is agonizing. It's like getting a very slow colonoscopy. Yeah. So at this point, my opinion, it's time for a change. If Green doesn't make the change, bam, you got to slam the ultimatum and go, if I don't see NCAA tournament, your ass is gone. And there's no other way to do it. And I think I'm being fair. I mean, we're talking 6 out of 8 years of futility. I think it's time.
I agree. And, we talked about it. And Eric, I know we had a great conversation on it last time. I think when you look at the issue that has been brought up to me through numerous people, whether it's someone connected to Pitt basketball or someone connected to the Pitt athletic department, is the common theme around, resources. He finally has the resources that he needs to be successful. And to your point, Harry, it has become so far distant of what we were used to seeing, where, at the Peterson Event Center growing up, we remember a time where Pitt was 205-22 at the Peterson Event Center. I mean, a truly astounding mark from what I saw on the X. I have to verify, but I think enough people were talking about it. But that is a major, major point. And I think that when you can't do the simple stuff, when you can't do the stuff as in terms of being developed as a player, layups, free throws, and obviously we certainly had a conversation about it, and it's okay. And I think personally, because fans are going to a game that they paid for, tickets they paid for. Players are now being paid. The coaches are certainly paid. Okay. Jeff Capel, and I just want to get your comments on this, Eric, to see, your initial thoughts. Jeff Capel really had a number of comments after the last game in his press conference where he talked about having an issue with fans booing. I think there was one fan there, and I think it's been numerous times from people that I've talked to that there was a certain fan heckling Jeff Capel. I don't agree with that. I think that's ridiculous. I understand booing, not showing up to a game, certainly voicing your opinion that the guy, should be moved on from. but heckling the guy in person is no way to go, let alone someone but in the stands. But when you see this in Eric, you hear Jeff Capel talk about, well, it's never good to boo your team and you should support your team all the time. I kind of don't agree with that, because if you're not putting a good product on the floor, that is certainly up to you. I mean, that is up to you to at least put a progressive and in terms of an actual product out there that says, hey, they're actually working their tails off. I think we've seen too many games this year. I know you haven't watched a lot of the Pitt basketball games, but we've certainly had the issue where they hadn't been playing enough. Do you agree that that with Jeff Capel, or disagree with him that, hey, fans should be allowed to voice their opinions in terms of booing the team or just voicing their displeasure to say, hey, we want to see more of this team because we paid tickets to show up?
I think it's more than acceptable to boo a team, because when you see lack of effort. And I think you were saying this, and maybe Harry was saying this on some of the games he's watched, that there's a lot of guys standing around on offense.
Yeah.
And I don't know X's and O's of basketball, so I don't know sometimes if it is kind of, maybe there's I think there's a play in basketball called an isolation play, where everybody does spread out and it's like a one-on-one game to try to take advantage of a matchup or something because of a defensive switch or something like that, right?
Yeah.
If you're noticing lack of effort, it's good and okay to boo because you're a fan of that team. It is not okay to take it to the heckling. And even what we saw with the blue-haired goof with DK, here we go with the y'all again. The blue-haired goofball out there in Detroit, where you're kind of crossing the line, because you know what fans are doing right now? They're using the excuse that they paid for the ticket as an excuse to get really basically just to cross the line of heckling.
Yeah, vile stuff. Yeah,
and that's not good, and that's not good. And just like I said, like the blue-haired guy in Detroit, that's not good. But from Capel's press conference to bring it up and to bring it up the way that he did, it sounds like a guy who's comfortable right now. And what I mean by that is I think he is getting next year, and he, at Harry's point, he should and better get the ultimatum of, you better win with these players now, because you can turn around when you got three top guys that can carry you far into an ACC tournament, and it should be good enough to get you an NCAA bid. So the press conference did not give me good vibes. It gave me one where I don't think Capel, or at least the conversations he's had maybe with Alan Green, is this is like a mulligan year for him, or else I don't think he would say stuff like that. Because Jeff Capel's a former athlete. They got thick skin when it comes to fans booing, and it sounded like it's getting to him. But he's just like, he's trying to tell fans, listen, you can't do that. And as a coach, you can't say that. In my opinion.
And the one thing is too. Go ahead, Harry.
No, if I could just add though, if he does have one more year, Cialipa has really come on. This is a young man that has NBA talent, has an NBA body. Obviously, he was a rugby player. You hate to lose an asset like that. You have Witherspoon, and I really like what I see from Moore, especially tonight. Played pretty well. Okay. There's assets there, and if you mirror them with the three that are coming in, the reason I'm pointing that out, it isn't like we're bereft of talent. There's some talent there. And I forget because he hasn't played. The center that we gave all the NIL money to, and I don't know what happened. I believe it was an injury.
The medical injury, yeah.
That was, look, let's be real, really bad luck. So I won't, you can't say that, anything bad about Capel on that one. But the point being, if you look at Cialipa, Witherspoon, Moore, Cummings, there's talent there. If he's retained, there should be no excuse to not get to the tournament. If all of that comes back. Now, after this negative experience, it's hard to say if some of them may want to leave. We'll see, but I still stick with what I say. I think it's time for a change.
And I agree. And, to a number of different points here, the one thing I really had an issue with, and you start to see the really doubt, the spiraling of a coach, is when they kind of go after the fan base. When Jeff Capel was first hired here, the first thing he talked about is wanting to get the Pete back to where it was. The Oakland Zoo was second to none when it came to an environment. I mean, we've seen the videos growing up as a kid. When I went to those games, Harry, you've gone to a number of different games there whenever they were, Levance Fields, DeJuan Blair, Sam Young, Ronald Ramon. You had, just talent galore, and watching those teams play at a high level and just how hard and how tough they played. The problem that I had is, what Jeff Capel should have said is, we understand the frustration. There's no one more frustrated than we are. And he made a comment about that.
He did, yeah.
But he should have said, I do appreciate the passion of the fan base. But instead, he went after the fan base to say, well, I told our team, you better be prepared to be booed if you're not playing well. And you have to know where we are. And that, they're not going to support us all year round. I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, I understand, we're not like Nebraska football where, there's nothing to do in Nebraska and then everyone's going to a Nebraska football game because it's their tradition. At the end of the day, there has to be a good product on the court. At least if you're competing, you can have a conversation. But that was the one real thing where I looked at Jeff from a couple days ago and said, man, he looks really defeated. This is year 8. I think he certainly made a number of comments about potentially this being his last job, even when his contract is finished out. But you have to wonder, even with the recruiting class that he has coming in, which I think Jay Kuntz and his staff has done a good job of getting 3-4 stars and really a top 6 class in college basketball. But the question is, can you develop those players? And there's a real question mark around that. There really is, because we've had too many years of great players coming in here and not being developed. So, to both your points, for me personally, I think to rejuvenate the fan base, and I've certainly said this about the football program too, to rejuvenate the fan base, you need to show you're invested. And I've said it before, I have been a massive, massive supporter from behind the scenes of Alan Green because of the fundraising. But at the end of the day, he is now officially, to me, on the clock. And we need to start seeing some of these, these moves, because the non-revenue sports, I get it. We can go a little bit longer on those. But the cash cow will always be football. And the next up is basketball. The two major sports with any university that provides opportunity for revenue. And as I've always said, when you look at athletics, especially football and basketball, the front porch to every university is athletics, whether people like that or not. It brings in revenue. It pays the bills for everywhere else. It drives massive amounts of applications. We saw that after the 2021 ACC championship game. We broke records for 2-3 straight years of how many people we were bringing in. On top of that, our enrollment has gone up. But no one wants to be a part of a team or a roster or a school where there's no give and take and there's no commonality to where they're not pushing for those championships. And I really do believe that Joan Gable and Alan Green are going to be put on a spot here where you have to have that conversation, because you do have a guy like a Jarrett Calhoun out there at Utah State. Is he a guy that you want to go after and potentially put in there? That also has a number of conversations where, do they have the NIL? Do they have the rev share? What they're pushing through there. That is the biggest thing. And from all intents and purposes, we clearly see they have the money now because they're bringing in massive amount of talent this coming season. But the question is, can you go get that other guy? And again, I'm just throwing this name out there. I would not be shocked from anybody, because he loves he loves this university, but more importantly, his wife loves Pittsburgh. I wouldn't be shocked if somehow, some way, Jamie Dixon tried to put his name in the fire again. And again, I know we don't like retreads, and I know we don't like bringing guys back. We're certainly watching from around the country, and we certainly had our own guys like a Johnny Majors who came back and did not perform well. Yeah. So it's sometimes good to go in another direction. Leon Rice out of Boise State, he's another guy. There's nothing wrong with a good change. And I think after 8 years, to both of your guys' points, change is paramount. And I really do believe to move this basketball program in a better direction and to really rejuvenize this fan base, you need to show a clear commitment. And that's going to be up to Joan Gable and to Alan Green. Any last thoughts on this, gentlemen, before we head off into the next topic of the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike McCarthy?
No, I think it's really, I don't know if it's going to be even much more about the wins and losses down the road for Pitt, because the tournament's out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, how do they play? Are they scrappy? Even if they lose, are they fighting? That's going to show the effort. And to Harry's point about the kids that would want to come back with Capel next year, if he were to come back.
Yeah,
you're going to see that if these kids are still buying in to Coach Capel, that's an indication of he would return, and some of these guys would be coming back to to work with those star players, because right now only going 7 deep. I mean, attrition's real throughout the whole season, and I'm afraid you might get some bigger margin losses. But if they fight, that'll be a big indication.
And last comment on it up here, and Max here real quick. For me, I'm out on Capel. I'd be willing to sacrifice the recruiting class for a new coach. 7 of 8 years, no tournament is unacceptable. Harry, last thoughts.
Let's face it. I'm going to focus on Alan Green. This is going to be his first test. Yeah. And if Capel is kept, the fans have been screaming for this. Now's the time. Well, I should say at the end of the season, this is the time to communicate. If you are keeping him, explain to the fans the rationale. Don't hide behind the desk. I don't think he will, by the way. Put something out. Let's face it. I don't know how many wins we're going to have. Maybe there aren't going to be a lot, but you need to put a statement out stating why you're keeping them and the rationale. But get in front of this and not behind it. Because if he gets behind it, you're going to get more negativity rolling downhill on this guy. So I think it's his first test. I don't understand the rationale for keeping him, but if he does, it is because of the talent coming in, and it's very clear, one and done. One more or you're done. So, but I think Alan Green needs to be on top of this, stay in front of this, and communicate to the fan base. And honestly, after the bludgeoning of 6 out of 8 years being very futile, I think he kind of has to do that.
And I agree. And we've talked about it where Alan Green has had a number of interviews. I know people. Sometimes you don't know what to say, but at the end of the day, at the end of the season is a good time for the athletic director to come out and say, hey, we're either moving on, or to your point, Harry, here's why we're keeping him. And a statement must be made if he is kept. I agree. Now up to the next one. Before, again, we get to our next topic here, remember, we've got now 237 people in the show right now. Make sure down below you hit like, you hit subscribe. It's easy. It's free. We're on our road to 2,000 subscribers here. And of course, the show is free. So don't be a hoe. Share the show. Next up, the second topic of the tonight, the Pittsburgh Steelers make a hire out of Greenfield, PA, and that's Mike McCarthy, Super Bowl winning head football coach. He's been now at a number of different places, but as a head football coach, the Green Bay Packers, the Dallas Cowboys, and now on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. A number of comments, obviously, as you can imagine, a number of fans, and even including myself, were very disappointed in the hiring of Mike McCarthy that says, hey, there's a good argument that says this is pretty much like a Mike Tomlin, because Mike McCarthy has actually a lesser win percentage than Mike Tomlin. And when you look at his last head coaching stop with the Dallas Cowboys, a major remark that was made is that he had Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, possibly the best offensive line in the National Football League, Ezekiel Elliott, and they only won, 1 to 2 playoff games. That can be a bit of a concern. But I want to start with Eric on this, who, again, the Birdcage, which was the best podcast around for any Steelers talk. You certainly had a great conversation last night. I suggest to everybody go subscribe to the Birdcage and see the conversation from last night to see everything in details. But Eric, when you look at this hire, one, grade the hire for us in terms of, an A for great, F for complete, absolute failure, and tell me your thoughts on why it's either good or bad.
So if you want to give me a letter grade, I'm going to say C, because it's incomplete, because I want to see his staff before I make a final judgment. I said some things last night, and if you can go back, I won't go through the whole diatribe again on it too, but I was on with Chris Shula / Clint Kubiak, the younger guys, more or less Kubiak than I was Chris Shula. Then there was the report coming out about, and again, I don't know if this is the Steelers PR, because obviously then the media goes and asks the Rams about this, where Chris Shula allegedly bombed the interview. I don't like the word bomb. We were talking about this last night. I think it's more of didn't wow, right? Didn't wow is not a bad term. And I went back and looked, and because I want to see how much interest Chris Shula now has around the league, because I was very surprised that the Steelers did not bring him in, because they would have been able to interview him regardless, because if they'd have been the Super Bowl like Clint Kubiak is, they can interview him because they have the bye week. They lost like they did. Obviously now it's off season for them. They can interview. I was very surprised that they made the move that quick.
Mm-hmm.
And And it was because I thought they would go the route of a younger guy, of a younger coach. I like the hire in this regard. If you're going to see what you have in Will Howard, this is the guy to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. And by the way, people are like, well, what did he do without Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, and all these other, the quarterbacks, Dak Prescott? From 2000 to 2004, he had a really good offense in New Orleans with a quarterback named Aaron Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
They were at worst the 15th best offense. They were anywhere from 10 to 15 in offense every year with Aaron Brooks. And I understand the Mike Tomlin 2.0, what you said, JJ, because it's very similar. Regular season, he's 11-11 in the playoffs versus the 8-12.
1-1 in the Super Bowl.
1-1 in the Super Bowl, right?
Has less wins than Tomlin.
Here's where I say it's for that aspect, you're right. It's Tomlin 2.0. But here's where it's different. He's not a defensive guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's an offensive. He's known for his offense.
Very good point.
There's 3 key positions on this, and I'll turn it over to Harry or anybody else wants to talk. There's 3 key positions for Mike McCarthy. We were talking about this last night. Obviously, it's the coordinators. More so the defensive coordinator than the offensive coordinator because Mike McCarthy is going to call the plays. And I think he should. And who's going to be the defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator? Stupid. And then who is the offensive line coach?
Yeah.
Because they have very good young offensive linemen. And these coordinators, if you look at the last 3 drafts, the Steelers hit on 70% of their players as far as significant contributors. So these coordinators, who are they going to bring in to get the most out of this talent? And then they're going to have a lot of money to go do business elsewhere. And they could turn it around quickly. But let's see how they develop Will Howard and if they bring anybody else in.
Very good points. And the Speedy Tortoise here, speaking of Alan Green, he's been here for 15 months. He brought in more money to the athletic department in the first 4 months he was here than the whole year prior. That is correct.
Great
Per
point.
the Panther Club on X, he did break a record for fundraising, which, from what I've been told, is he's already broken that record this year so far. So that is a fact. So it's a very good point, Speedy Tortoise. I appreciate that comment. And going into a number of different comments here, you look at the Steelers, a number of great points by Eric. And, going to Harry on this, you look at this guy and a number of comments in here, I don't care where he's from. All I care about is how he's going to produce. And Eric had a very good point. This is a complete different change to what we're normally used to seeing, where the Steelers are used to making hires really every 2 decades, which is a pretty impressive feat in itself. You look at Mike McCarthy, a guy that clearly in today's press conference was choked up. This is a very serious job to him. Wearing the black and gold really means something to him. Certainly had all of his family there. Very good moment in the least. But when you look at this hire, to Eric's point, I do agree. How Clint Kubiak was not interviewed even by Zoom, which you are allowed to do while they're still in the playoffs. Chris Shula, we've seen a number of reports that came out about how Chris Shula bombed the interview, which was incorrect, which I already knew about that because I heard from a number of different sources that was definitely not the case. I was shocked in itself why the Steelers made this hire as fast as they did, because Mike McCarthy had already pulled his name out from other places. Chris Shula did the same exact thing with the Cleveland Browns. He was another guy that pulled his name out of that, where the Cleveland Browns may have to hire LeBron James to coach their football team at this point with how badly they're struggling. But they didn't hire. They didn't interview Clint Kubiak. They didn't interview Chris Shula in person. They didn't interview Nate Shieldhouse in person. You kind of have to look at it and say, what was the rush? Because you're trying to find that right guy. Harry, do you think that they made the right hire? Were you shocked that potentially they hire a little bit too quickly? And in what grade would you give the Pittsburgh Steelers in this hire?
So let me say this. I initially assumed it was a customary, just being nice, local guy. I have warmed up on it. When he was announced, and when Schefter reported he was a serious candidate, I go, uh-oh, maybe this is the real deal. Of course, I was shocked. Because there was an algorithm that has worked. You've only had 3 coaches through the years. The algorithm has worked nicely. Yeah. Young, defensive-minded. Kubiak, I actually would have been thrilled if they brought him in. It did seem rushed. Now, that being said, the Rooneys are the employer. Omar Khan is the employer. You had a guy come in. Now, in all fairness, I try to step back and think of it from their perspective, too. the people we are naming have much thinner resumes than Mike McCarthy. So
Correct.
McCarthy's coming in. Let's face it. He could say, "I won a Super Bowl." They haven't done that all the years. He's an offensive guy. I'm warming up to it. Let me first state, I have a bunch of notes here, but I think it's better we're doing this podcast tonight because we're able to watch him today. I watched every minute of the press conference.
Yeah, as did I.
Even my brother texted me from Florida, went, "You know what? He choked me up." I think it does matter that he's a Yinzer. People are going to go, "Oh, it doesn't matter." You know what, though? When you look at the passion that the guy had, he couldn't get through his choking up. Maybe that factors in. Now, let me say this. There's good and there's bad. So for many, many years, the Steelers offense, I think, is not, they haven't been ranked any higher than 23rd in the last, 5 years. Mm-hmm. So clearly he's an offensive guy. But the key is he's had stellar seasons, 12-win seasons with Dak, with Rodgers. Point being, I think this could go if he finds his guy within the next 2 years. I'm going to give him 2 years. This could go possibly very well with the hire of some good coordinators. If he can't find his guy within 2 years, we could be looking at futility, and this could end up being really ugly. Yep. I talk about hidden assets. So go back to Brett Favre. Brett Favre was in Atlanta, and they didn't want to play him. I don't know why. He gets shipped up to Green Bay. We all know what happens after that. Now, I am not comparing, for the Twitter trolls, Will Howard to Brett Favre. The situation could be similar, where you have a guy sitting there that hasn't been given a sniff yet. And to Eric's point, if McCarthy can do something with him, and he did win a national championship, then you don't have to worry the following year to blow a bunch of draft picks to pick your guy. Now, if Howard soils himself like Eric might have if he kept drinking, then at that point, you go into next year's draft, which is going to be loaded with quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Get your guy and pray it works out. So I do see, and I think Eric, I have two I have it here. It says defensive coordinator, offensive line coach to me are critical.
Yep.
Eric, you're right. Like if he's making the calls, the offensive coordinator is kind of diminished in a sense, or they're running his system.
And
the D coordinator is very important. The offensive line coach is important. Now let me say this: Scott McCurley, who's a Pitt man, was probably going to stay there. There's a relationship there. I figure Eddie Faulkner and Denzel Martin have a chance to stay on board. I was shocked today. I have fourth on this list, Carl Dunbar. I didn't think Dunbar.
I was shocked.
What an absolute shock that was.
And I know he's beloved by the D-line, so I was shocked that could happen. We could see Lou Getsy or Alex Van Pelt come back as well, two Pitt guys.
Yeah.
But I've warmed up on the hire. I think we had driftwood for coordinators about a year ago, so we'll see who he hires. With the right hires in place, and I think, again, this is imperative, we find the guy at quarterback. It's been, when you think about it, post Big Ben, it's been a rough ride. I mean, it's been I kind of feel like the Cleveland Browns, and it's about time. But I think, to Eric's point, if you find that, and you know what? Truthfully, I hope it's Howard. He seems like a really good. He'd be a great. He's a high character guy. He's won a championship. He seems to understand what his presence means in the public. He's not going to embarrass the Steelers. I hope it's him. If it's not, then you draft somebody. But if he doesn't find the guy within 2 years, we have to significantly reevaluate what's happened. And to Eric's point, I hate to grade it because I need to see the staff.
Yeah.
But again, if I'm Harry Employer and they're walking in, giving me their resumes, I get it, and I completely, and you know what, to his credit, he had a great sales pitch. You've stunk on offense. You haven't developed a quarterback. I do those things well. And by the way, unlike all these other young kids, I work for two of the most storied franchises in NFL history, now the third, and I have a Super Bowl ring. So if you think of it from their perspective, they're not complete. Everybody's calling them buffoons. I don't see them as complete buffoons.
I agree. And to a super chat here, Dave Pancake, get Bob Huggins. No need to drive down to Oakland.
Oh,
obviously.
Hey, let me take a Huggy Bear. I've said this before. I have a warm spot for Huggins. My dad, my dad was as diehard a WVU fan as anybody. When he was struggling in the hospital, guess who called him? Bob Huggins.
Bob Huggins.
So Huggy Bear will always have. I will never say a bad word about Bob Huggins, regardless of the alcohol content in his system. He is honestly was phenomenal. I'll never forget that.
Couldn't agree more. I think a lot of players would also say how much they love Bob Huggins. So wish him the best. And I think to your points though about Mike McCarthy, and here's what I'll say about it. And when you look at the hiring process, it really did show when Art Walker, wow, almost out of North Allegheny, Art Rooney, when he talked about it, and the first thing he said, he's like, look, if I could find another Mike Tomlin, I'd be happy with it. That immediately told me he had no interest in getting rid of Mike Tomlin until he stepped down. So this outcome was almost predicted to a way because of what their mindset was. The disappointment that I have in this is you look around the league, and especially like the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, they interviewed 8 people in person. The Steelers interviewed 3. Anthony Weaver, Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator, Brian Flores, who I think was the other finalist in this, defensive coordinator out of the Minnesota Vikings, former linebacker coach under Tomlin for a year, and then Mike McCarthy. To your guys' point, in a way, I do like how they went offense. And I think that when you look at the way that he has developed quarterbacks, he's a guy also, too, that was over in San Francisco that drafted, I almost said Aaron Smith, the quarterback out there. Help me out with it. Alex Smith. Drafted Alex Smith over Aaron Rodgers. There was a little bit of hatred over that because then, obviously, Mike McCarthy goes to Green Bay, but Mike McCarthy put Aaron Rodgers through really the quarterback school where he really changed his entire dynamics and changed his entire schematics in terms of his technique of how he threw. And look where Aaron Rodgers today, I mean, even in his early 40s, his arm is still through the roof. Obviously still not the player that he was. I mean, any type of pass rush, he certainly struggled, but he's a guy who's developed quarterbacks. The problem that I have is it's just how fast it was made. I think that you could have interviewed more people in person to get a really full diagram, and not to bring in Clint Kubiak, Nate Schilhaas, out of the LA Rams, Chris Shula. You had other names out there who you could have brought in all around the board, but they made their hire, and I think it is a grade. I'll give it a C because one, you do want to see what staff they bring in. You guys had a great point. I thought McCarthy talked about it today. He talks about how he likes the 3-4. He's going to use the personnel that he has. And obviously he loves the 3-4 because he ran it in Green Bay. Don Capers came over, one of the initial people like Dick LeBeau, who ran the 3-4 defense, extremely aggressive, something that was very successful for him. And also, Eric, he talked about when he won a Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers, what did he have above anything else besides offense? He had a top 5 defense with the Green Bay Packers, and they won a Super Bowl. And his comment today, defense wins championships. So want to get your last thoughts, Eric, on, when you hear a guy like McCarthy talk about he's got to put together a staff. It is a little bit harder now than what it was back in the day to put together a staff, but he's going to stay with the 3-4 defense as he's done in previous years and in previous systems. He did a good job where he had a 4-3 system in Dallas. He made sure he kept that 4-3 and allowed a defensive coordinator to run their defense. But now he's adjusting it to this roster, which is clearly it's a bit aged on the defensive side of the football, but they are prepared to run a 3-4 system as we've seen through the past, and it's been here since Chuck Noll. What are your thoughts on that and really adapting to say, hey, we're going to pick the right scheme and keep the scheme here that's really important to the city of Pittsburgh?
I really – not to sound rude about it, but I don't think he has much of a choice because that's what the talent has here.
Yeah.
There are 2 aging players of the 4 on defense could be gone. Cam Hayward could retire, and Jalen Ramsey saves you $19.7 million of cap with 0 dead money.
Yep.
And when you already have upwards of 50-some million, I don't know, I've seen different reports, so it fluctuates. If they get rid of Ramsey or they cut ties at Ramsey, they're going to have anywhere from high 60s to low $80 million of cap room. That is a lot of room to do things. Now, you have to build this defense, around your 4 edge rushers. As a group, you have 4 very, very good edge rushers. You have 3 young studs on the defensive line of Y.A. Black, Benton, and Harmon. If Cam comes back for another year, that's a plus.
Yeah.
You have cornerback 1 and Joey Porter Jr. You have a nucleus that is built around a 3-4 scheme. I would be curious because, again, there's no true 3-4 like we know with Casey Hampton and things like that. It's more of a 2-4-5 nickel, occasionally 3-3-3-5, things like that. So there's different flavors of 3-4 schemes with this, but you have the players to do so. And a lot of these players are on rookie contracts, just like the other side of the ball, where it used to be the offense, so they can go and spend $170 million on defense. They didn't do it very well. They didn't get a good return on investment with it. But that's why you saw such a lopsided cap spend on one side of the ball. Now that youth, outside of a few aging players that you were talking about, that talent's on the defense, and now it's time to start investing in the offense. How do we do that? Let's bring a coach in that has coached offensive football for over 20 years and knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Bring in that. I am so. There's a name out there, Al Harris, the former corner from Green Bay. I think he's with Dallas now. There was a couple of names out there that were floating. Another guy used to play for, I think, Justin Simmons. I don't know much about him, but I'm not going to poo-poo him because I don't know if he's good or not. I like maybe Raheem Morris. Then you got Justin Leonard, who's a defensive assistant with the Denver Broncos, used to play for the Ravens. I think he had a couple of great years as a DC up at Wisconsin. You have a lot of young defensive coordinators you can grow, and then bring in a young OC that kind of can develop under McCarthy. Right? Let's see what this looks like. But I think keeping the 3-4, to go back to your question, I think was a very good thing because Tomlin did it when he got here because he had LeBeau. You already got one side of the ball figured out. Just get the right coach to continue to develop it. And let's see where this thing goes, man. At the end of the day, my towel's still waving. I don't care who the hell the coach is.
I agree. And then obviously, too, yeah, you were correct. Chuck Noll did run a 4-3. My apologies.
He did.
Bill Cowher was the first one to go to the 3-4 system. And, I think when you look at the Steelers at this point, I do agree. I think the offensive coordinator will be in name only. I did see a comment up here from Charlie Messiano, of course, on X. Shanahan has been to the mountaintop and nothing left to prove at IU. Steelers OC for 2 years, learns the master, and then takes over at Pitt. I can promise you, Charlie, while that would be cool, he will certainly not be going to the National Football League. And I can tell you, he will certainly be staying and making $2.7 million this year as the offensive coordinator in Indiana and looking to retain their title.
Cool thought.
Within college football, but very cool thought. But I think at this point, I think we can agree that the offensive coordinator, whoever he hires, will be in name only. This will be McCarthy's way of doing it, way he's been doing things since he's been a head coach in the National Football League. The question that really, I think that I agree with you both, is who is the defensive coordinator? Who is calling this defense as he hands it over? And can McCarthy really learn from his past, where really McCarthy has not had a great defense the majority of years, besides 1 year. And he won a Super Bowl that year with Aaron Rodgers. What can he truly learn? At the end of the day, to me, I'm willing to see how this plays out. And I know Christopher Lawrence will put your comment up here. I agree. I'm willing to see how this works out. Am I still disappointed in the hire? Yes. I think it's too much, even though it's an offensive hire. At least it's not defense. I think it's a little bit too close to the Mike Tomlin era where you really struggled to win playoff games, especially seeing Mike McCarthy down in Dallas, where Dallas struggled in the playoffs when they got there. Christopher Lawrence, as much as I did not like the hire, I'm willing to see what type of staff he sets up. I think this is his last go-around, so it might surprise some of us. My wife is from SV, likes the Bishop Boyle tie. Very good comment. And again, we will certainly see what this looks like, but the new era of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike McCarthy, Greenfield native, and very clear that he wants to be here to coach his hometown football team. We'll see what he does, and we'll see if he can bring another Lombardi trophy back to the city of Pittsburgh. Last topic of tonight, the Pitt football schedule. Who would have thought? The Pitt football schedule, we got to wait a couple days, and the schedule was released yesterday. Some pretty interesting football games on this schedule, and to go from top to bottom, the first game of the season is going to be at home, and the first really 4 games of the season are all at home. Pitt does not leave Acrisure Stadium until October 2nd. So it's pretty crazy. The whole first month of September will be played at home. That's against Miami of Ohio, UCF, week number 2, week 3 on a Thursday night against the Syracuse Orange. To finish out the month of September, Bucknell to finish out their non-con schedule. And then it's off on the road on a Friday night on October 2nd, the day after my birthday. Maybe we'll take a trip down there to Blacksburg to face the Fighting James Franklins, year one of the James Franklin era at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg. That'll be certainly a good game. I can imagine there will be a number of different spectacles at that game. Obviously, early on in the season, I think with a number of non-con games, Virginia Tech should pretty have a strong record going into that game. Enter Sandman will certainly be rocking as they're on the road. Then they head to, on a Saturday night, they face North Carolina at home here. I'm sorry, they're going to be at home here against North Carolina. Then they go on the road to Boston College, then on the road again against Miami. They'll be back home against Georgia Tech. Then they'll have a bye week. This year, only one bye week in college football this year, not two like the previous year. Then again on a Friday night, they will face at home the Florida State Seminoles, and then finish up the last two games in November against Louisville at Louisville, and then last game of the year at Cal. Gentlemen, you look at the schedule, one thing that was very noticeable, which I think could actually be a positive, because you look at those certain games, you can say, hey, we need viewership, because the higher the viewership, the more money and the more payout. Pitt has a number of games, 3 games on weeknights. The first one Thursday against Syracuse. The next one Friday at Virginia Tech, and the last one on a Friday at Florida State. So Syracuse, Virginia Tech, and Florida State. One, I'm going to start with Harry on this one. Are you surprised that Pitt got 3 weekday games? And is that a negative or a positive for this Pitt football team going into 2026?
I don't see it as a complete negative. It's more revenue generation for the program, and these games tend to be very viewed when you think about it, because you're not fighting for eyeballs, if you follow me.
Yep.
I don't mind it. I know some people don't. Selfishly, I'll say this too. I have a son that plays football for Allegheny College. Saturdays aren't easy for me now. My son's the priority. And we try to get to both the same day if we can, the games, but I kind of like when they're on weekdays. But I don't think it's a bad thing at all, and I think that Pitt will generate some more revenue from it. Looking at the schedule, the 2 games that probably scare me the most, we're going to be fighting James Franklin on October 2nd at Virginia Tech, and at Miami. Those are going to be some tough games to win. I hate that the last 2 are away as well. You never know what injuries are going to be plaguing the team, and that's a rough draw to have 2 games away like that at the end. But overall, I think Pitt could be highly competitive. There's no one that flat out scares me on the schedule, maybe with the exception of Miami, the way they're blowing through money. But I don't see a game, with the exception of Miami, it's going to be pretty tough, that isn't winnable on the schedule. And there's no reason why they can't head into Virginia Tech with some momentum 4-0, quite frankly.
I agree. And Eric, when you look at this football schedule, 10 P4 games on the schedule, and then 2 non-P4 games at Miami of Ohio and Bucknell. But to Harry's point, Virginia Tech will certainly be a game that people will be watching. What does Virginia Tech look like? I think personally, we can say, we can certainly make fun of Big Game James because he wasn't able to win the big one. Obviously, a former head football coach at Penn State. But he did a tremendous job in a short amount of time putting together a recruiting class and also a roster. I mean, he took a number of different guys from the Penn State recruiting class, almost the entire class at one point. But when you look at this whole schedule, Virginia Tech will be a great matchup. So you have James Franklin, and the next week you have North Carolina and Bill Belichick and his 24-year-old girlfriend. He'll certainly be at home there. And then Boston College, Miami. But you look at these games, Virginia Tech, North Carolina, at Miami, just in the national championship game. And then, of course, the Florida State Seminoles at home after a bye week. When you look at this schedule, and I think actually maybe even put it up on the screen here. Wouldn't even actually be a bad idea. Going to share my screen here with you guys so you can take a look at it while I am also looking at this as well. Put it up here. Here we go. So you look at this schedule here. I think, there's a number of really good games on here. We're going to see what this Pitt football roster looks like going into the spring. I do see a number of holes on this Pitt football team as they go into spring camp. It'll be interesting to see what these true freshmen look like. There's a number of guys we're looking at, who could be really good potential true freshmen. Marcus Jennings out of Cass Tech in Detroit, Michigan. Reston Lehman, defensive end, possibly playing as a true freshman out of Peters Township, hometown hero. Number of different guys. But when you look at this schedule, what are some games that you, in your opinion, will really stand out to Pitt fans?
I wouldn't sleep week 2 against UCF.
Yeah.
They have sneaky good athletes down there. And truth be told, I kind of pay attention to them. It's like a third team for me because we used to live in Orlando, and I know a lot of UCF alum from friends and such, and kind of like them as a program. Obviously, I'm not rooting for them, obviously, when they play Pitt. But they have some sneaky good athletes. They get some good transfers in there because people want to go down there and live by Mickey Mouse, I guess. But it's a really, really good. It's a really good test early on in the year. And early on in the year, you never know what the hell's going to happen. With some trickerations and some some tendencies year to year. I do like that they play Virginia Tech a few games in to the season, so you can kind of see what Franklin wants to do down there. Is it going to be similar to what he did at Penn State, or is he? When you get a handful of games out there, you can get kind of a beat on what he wants to do. And obviously, I'm looking forward to what we call online as the Dudek Bowl, which is the Florida State versus Pitt. Because I do like Florida State, except for when they play Pitt. So I'm looking forward to that game. I think it's always a clash, and Pitt's had some really good luck against Florida State. You know what I mean? It seems like they play well. And I like the Cal. It's on the West Coast, but it's the final game. So there's nothing they got to do after. With this stupid thumbs up again. They have nothing to do after that Cal game other than hopefully get ready for like a conference championship game or not. But the tough games are spread out. I like them. But like I said, let's see what this roster looks like after spring ball. But yeah, UCF, Virginia Tech, Florida State. I like those. Obviously, Miami's a tough game, but and I like where the bye week is at too.
I agree. And Harry, when you look at this schedule, one thing that clearly stands out, the month of September is in Pittsburgh. Is that a pro or con for this Pitt football team going into 2026, where your first 4 games are at home?
I think it's a pro. Because I'm a big guy that believes in momentum when it comes to sports.
Yeah.
And if you can get past, and Eric's right, UCF is a bit scary, but if you could get past them, Hughes has a lot of cleaning up to do. I know they did some, they're going to finally have a quarterback. But again, like I said, if you never know, let's say you're floating into the October 2nd, 4-0, you have that momentum. You don't know what can happen at Tech. So, no, I don't mind it at all. I think too, there's there's some units on the team, in particular, like wide receivers and some few others that need to be solidified. Yeah. So maybe Mason starts finding new targets that he likes to throw to. We have a really young receiver core at this point. There's only one, obviously, addition at night through the portal. So you're going to have to find your talent and develop what's there. And I think it could happen. I think there's a lot of talent there. So, no, I actually prefer that as opposed to being away. And I think they might have some momentum heading into the Blacksburg.
I agree with you again. And there's a number of games I look on the schedule that will be really interesting. And before I get to that comment, with a number of comments here, number one, I'm going to allow you guys, obviously, think of it real quick here. The very, very early January edition of what's Pitt's record going to be next year at the end of 2026? I'll allow you guys to think about that and think about how bad our guesses are as we sit here in January. But I think there's a number of really good football games, in here. I think the UCF game at home, the last time UCF was here at home was the Kenny Pickett, Aaron Matthews Philly special, which was truly a special game, very cool game to watch. Josh Heupel was the head football coach at that time when he was at UCF there. So that'll be a fun game. Syracuse. You know what? I don't mind facing Syracuse on a Thursday night. I think it's going to be a damn good football game early on in the season and seeing how they bounce back. Yingeral, thank you, sir, for the super chat. As always, appreciate you, sir. Also, too, I am very excited to see the James Franklin, Pat Narduzzi matchup. I think if I'm sitting here right now, I would actually give the win there to Virginia Tech. I think James Franklin, who has had the best of Pat Narduzzi in his career, Pat Narduzzi 1-3 versus James Franklin when he was at Penn State. I think it's going to be an interesting game, early on in the season. So the first, second, third, fourth, fifth game of the season down in Blacksburg. As you can imagine, Enter Sandman will be blasting there. Should be a great environment. I'll probably actually try to go to that football game. Be cool to see here at home, North Carolina and Bill Belichick. That whole experience so far has not gone well. I don't know how much better it gets this year. I don't think it will be better this year, to be quite frank with you. Miami held off. Pitt held off Miami and kept Mason Heinschel here in the royal blue and gold, which is a really good thing. And was a tight battle down to the end, and Pitt did a good job. But also too, at the end of the day, Mason did give up a lot of money to stay at Pitt, and that just goes to show the quarterback we have here at Pitt. And again, I very, very pleased, but more importantly, damn proud to have Mason Heinschel as our quarterback here at the University of Pittsburgh. And of course, you got besides Miami, Florida State. Florida State's always a good attraction, a good game, and Eric brought it up as well. I mean, you can't blame Eric for rooting for Florida State beyond when they're facing Pitt because, you have the Bobby Bowden days. And I always say, that's where Florida State really got their stripes, man, is the Bobby Bowden years. And the last two games of the year, Louisville, which seems to be at times Pitt's kryptonite. Can't find a way to beat Louisville unless, it's a lucky game here or there that we've had. And then Cal to finish out the year, they got themselves a really good, will be now a true sophomore quarterback. Miami will have a great quarterback in this conference. Darian Mesa, who leaves Duke, which again has been a whole nother debacle, which has been impressive in itself. But that's kind of where I have it at this point. But also wanted to ask you gentlemen here real quick, because I did see a comment in here. Boy, was there a stink. We'll get back to Pitt here in a second, and we'll talk about Pitt's record. I'm giving you guys more time to think about it here real quick, so we can go back and look about 9 or 10 months from now and say, what the hell were we thinking? But Dabo Swinney, boy, was there a debacle there. A linebacker committed, Luke Finelli, committed to Clemson, was enrolled to Clemson, was in class at Clemson. But Ole Miss certainly kept reaching out, and boy, did Dabo Swinney, Pete Golding, who's the head football coach at Ole Miss, certainly caught in the act of, texting Luke, the linebacker at Clemson, who committed there by way of Cal, by the way. Texting, which, again, you cannot do. A head football coach under no circumstance can contact a player on any team, let alone through text, and put out offer sheets, whether it's $1 million, more than $1 million, which we had seen. And if you're all wondering, yes, Luke Finelli is no longer on the Clemson football roster and is now enrolled as an Ole Miss Rebel. Harry, when you look at this, tampering is widespread. But number one, did you like what Dabo Swinney did in terms of calling out Pete Golding, the head football coach at Ole Miss, but more importantly, brought the receipts to them, brought the receipts to the public? Forget just submitting it to the NCAA, brought it to the public. And so should they also have more coaches do this? So really, to two-question part here. One, did you like what Dabo Swinney did? And two, should there be more head football coaches to step up and do this as well?
So I emphatically say yes. I agree. Let me tell you why. Fans have to understand. I mean, sure, they have some idea when it comes to recruiting. I've been involved in this over 30 years. I followed recruiting, and they have to understand the amount of hours spent communicating with the players, the amount of money spent to bring them in. And this is even before NIL. So you're including all of that, the visitations, courting the parents, spending money on dinners, bringing them in and housing them, the whole deal. And then on top of that, you have now NIL contracts. You go through all that effort, you secure an asset, a player with a very, very high ceiling in this case, and you have someone blatantly tamper, and all your efforts are fizzled overnight because of the almighty dollar. Hell yeah, I would call, and in that case, God bless him. He didn't pull a Fran Brown, by the way. Still makes me laugh, who threatened to beat up coaches that do that. He basically said, I'm going to come after him. But I think he did the right thing. I think there needs to be more of this. I blame the NCAA for allowing this to get this out of control. But if there is blatant tampering, and you can imagine the frustration, I don't blame him for calling him out. I think it's something Narduzzi would do. I know Deuce doesn't have any problems doing that at all. I actually really felt for him, and I'm really glad he did it. And this is someone, by the way, that has quite a bit of distaste in his mouth with the NIL era when it comes to Dabo. So I can imagine that was really a raw nerve when it happened. So, am I glad it happened? Emphatically, yes. Do I agree with him calling the coach out? Yes, and I hope more of it happens.
Eric, when you look at this situation, one, were you happy about it? And two, should more coaches have the balls to step up? Because we even had an in-conference deal with Miami stealing Darian Mensah away,
right,
who signed a 2-year contract worth $4 million annually per season, so a 2-year, $8 million deal, which we saw that really Commissioner Jim Phillips, who I think has been an absolutely horrific commissioner for the ACC. One, did you like what Dabo did? And two, should more coaches really step up? And if they don't, they probably should shut the hell up.
I'm agreeing with Harry on this. I mean, fortunately, some coach has to take the sword. Somebody has to be first. And I'm glad it's somebody with Dabo Sweeney's stature in
Prestige,
the college
yeah.
game and the prestige.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Is the one that did it. I do think more coaches need to step up, but I think then the next action needs to be a commissioner. I'm telling you what, this whole
yeah,
there needs to be a commissioner that needs to put some action behind this too. I don't know if it'll ever get to that because every commissioner I think is just I don't know if they want to be that guy because of what's coming up in 2031 with all these mega TV deals, and you don't want this bad pub within the conferences. But I'm glad he called him out. I'm glad he had the receipts. We all know this has been going on for decades.
Yeah.
In some little bit lower form of fashion, right? There's the joke that NIL just stands for now it's legal. But regardless, I mean, Dabo is like I said, he's a known coach. He needs to do it. Regardless of what people think about Dabo, regardless of what he has said in the past about NIL, some people might look at it as sour grapes, get off my lawn type of comments and, tattletaling. But somebody has to do it because it's going to open eyes. And I'm looking for the next coach to do it because it's happening all over. There's going to be coaches they're going to just shut up and just deal with because they're doing it too. So you can't be a hypocrite. But something's going to happen, and I think it even has to happen even a school bigger than Clemson.
I agree, and I do give Dabo a lot of credit, and man, am I rooting for him. Blow it up. And I've been a guy where I understand if a player hits the portal, anybody can contact them.
Yes.
Under no circumstance should any football team in college be allowed to, whether it's directly or through a third party, contact a player to enter the portal. And we've had this conversation on here, as Ed Orgeron once said, the biggest change and the biggest adjustment to college football right now for these bigger schools is instead of bringing the money through the back door, you bring it through the front door. That's really the only change a lot of these teams are going through. But the biggest change that what I really do believe will solve 70%, if not more, 70 to 80% of the dilemma that we're facing in college football is the transfer portal. And we have talked about this. You should be allowed one time to transfer without repercussion. And then the only time after that should be when your coach gets fired. If you do anything outside of that, you have to sit out a year. You would immediately eliminate a lot of what's happening. For example, Darian Mensah wouldn't be able to transfer because he'd have to sit out a year. And I can assure you he would not sit out a year. He would be playing at Duke this season.
Yeah.
So a lot what John Calipari has talked about, Mike Izzo has talked about, because of the major issues in college basketball where there's players from the professional leagues, the G League, being allowed to go back into college basketball, which is an absolute travesty. I mean, it is hurting high school recruiting. And it's not just college basketball. It's also in college football because of the transfer portal being allowed to be open free agency every single year. So the transfer portal, in my opinion, needs to change. And we've talked about that. Also, too, there needs to be, and the fact that Dabo said this is a clear-cutting case. There needs to be collective bargaining. There needs to be a collective bargaining agreement with the players. because there cannot be annual free agency every year. A player in college football should not be making more money than a guy in the National Football League, because the majority of these players will not be going to the National Football League. There has to be some type of guardrails where there has to be rules and structure, because these coaches should not be recruiting high school players, then recruiting players out of the portal, and then on top of that, recruiting their own players for 4+ years. It's unsustainable. On top of that, as we've talked about on this show, Harry has talked about it in quite length, same with Eric, is donor fatigue. It is a process that is just so worn out. It is unsustainable. Heck, even Mark Cuban talked about it and said it's not sustainable. You can't continue to ask and go back to the well where you had even Charles Barkley. He said, hey, I love Auburn. I'll give $1 million a year, but I'm not going to give you $3, $4, $5 million a year to keep up with the times and keep up with the Joneses. It's not going to happen.
Yep.
So there's a number of things that need to change. The last thing that needs to change is how many teams are getting into the college football playoff. And the Big Ten asking for 24 teams is outside their damn mind, because 24 teams do not need to get into the college football playoff.
No.
Just because they want more of their teams in there.
Yeah.
Which, again, kudos to them for winning the last 3 national titles. Okay, that's great. By all means, hey, they've won the last 3. That's great. But under no circumstance should any conference be getting 5, 6, 7+ teams in the college football playoff. It should not be happening. So there's a number of things that need to change. Now, what doesn't need to change as of right now is our record predictions for Pitt football going into 2026.
Look at you doing like media training or something with your segues, brother. Look at that. Look at you. Look at you.
Eric, when you look at this Pitt football roster as we sit here in January, where we have not seen one player on this roster practice, play, or do anything, heck, even train, what is your prediction for Pitt football as we sit here on January 27th of 2026? What's the record out of a 12-game schedule for the Pitt Panthers?
Man, you know what? I looked at Virginia Tech's schedule quickly while you guys were talking.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be 4-0 when they play Pitt. VMI, Old Dominion, Maryland, Boston College, then Pitt.
Yeah.
That's going to be the first test, I believe. So I would say possibly you look at 4-1 with that. Man, I'm going to stay 9-3 again, because if the talent I could see differently. So yeah, I'm just going to say 9-3 right now, because like I said, I'll look back and probably think I'm full of garbage on this, but I have confidence in Mason developing, and I think that's a big plus. There's going to be a lot of games where he's the best quarterback on the field, this year for Pitt, and that means something. As long as that offensive line holds up, I do think that I'm so intrigued with this tight end group as a whole and what this will look like in the offensive scheme. I think they match up very well, and we'll see what's actually left at Miami, because Miami's getting plucked as well too. I know they're bringing some people in. So 9-3. I can't tell you who they lose other than I think Virginia Tech, but I say that and they'll probably beat Virginia Tech. Who knows?
Harry, when you look at this roster without seeing them practice or play or train or even talk to them, what is your prediction for the 2026 Pitt Panthers?
So optimistically, I'm going to say 9-3. I agree with Eric. I believe in Mason. I think he's going to improve. The 2 at the end scare me. Louisville seems to be our kryptonite at the moment. Mm-hmm. And you lose that game, then you have to fly to the West Coast and play a Cal team that has a great young quarterback, just like Mason. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to lie. It wouldn't shock me if it was 8-4, but I'm going to say 9-3 right now. Although people are complaining about additions or lack thereof to the offensive line, actually, I think it's going to be rather stout. You have your left tackle in place with Olivier that you just brought in, and the returning players. The question's going to be, to me, again, is the tight end, wide receiver room got to solidify. But, I'll be optimistic. I'll say 9-3. Let me say this again: if things go awry throughout the season, we could be looking at the end of the Narduzzi era. And I don't mean that to be negative. I just think, it might have run its course. He's been here quite some time. But for his sake, I do think he's done a lot for the program. I hope we could be staring at a 9 to 10 win season for Dues. Like I said, and so that's my general thought right now. I'm looking forward to spring ball, to seeing how some of these players pan out.
Yeah.
And to Eric's point, tight end's going to be interesting. Wide receiver will be interesting. There's some positions where we just have to see who's going to emerge. But I do think the talent's there.
I agree. There's a number of different things. I think that the ceiling is 10 wins. I think that the floor is 6 wins. I think when you look at this roster right now, I was disappointed on a number of ends. I don't think that we got a wide receiver one. I don't think that we added elite talent out of the portal for the offensive line. I think the offensive line will be better because we've added a number of guys, but also we've got guys from, let's just say, in the depth chart that I think they're going to really step up this year. We've talked about a number of guys on the offensive line. Obviously, B.J. Williams being back, Ryan Bayer being back. We're going to certainly see Penn, the offensive lineman that we got out of Penn here. We obviously added an offensive guard out of Akron, third team All MAC. But also to both of your points, I'm going to make a hot prediction and say this is the last year. I will say as a hot prediction, this is the last year of the Pat Narduzzi era, in my opinion. And I think that Pitt will be looking for the next head football coach. Okay. And not because there's a lot of losses coming or there's a lot of wins coming out, going out on a high note. I just will say, I think that Pat Narduzzi has just reached his time. And I think that will be something to pay attention to. But also, too, one thing I trust Pat Narduzzi to do on 3rd and 15, he's going to call a timeout to make sure we give up a first down. He's always really good with that. Also, too, I expect Pat Narduzzi to go for it at some point. Whether it's 4th and 9, 4th and 10 on his own 30. I expect him to do that at least one time during the season because he's been fabulous at that, to say the least. So as of right now, as we're going into this year, I'm going to put it kind of in the middle. I'm going to put us at 8-4 or 7-5. I really want to see how this team performs during spring ball. I think there's a lot of let's just say a lot of things to prove. And I thought Harry had a great point, and so did Eric. When you look at this roster and you look at the schedule, Miami will be the toughest team on the schedule, I think, with a lot of returning talent. They've added a lot of guys out of the portal, but it's not over daunting. There will be games that will be certainly tough. I think Virginia Tech will be tough. Miami will be tough. I think even depending upon what happens with Florida State and who they pick up at quarterback, I think Florida State will be tough at home. But in reality, I can see why the ceiling is 10 wins, because you do have Mason Heinzel returning. He's going into another year with Cade Bell, who effectively looks a lot better in this system. But you want to see some corrections and some changes. And I really do believe Pitt could really have a good year if this team comes together. If this team comes together and says, we're going to work our asses off every single game. And that, as we talked about in our Pitt meet and greet, it is all for one and one for all. The we not me mantra. I think that there are a collection of great young men on this football team. I think there's a lot really good leadership on this football team going into this season, but there's certainly a lot to prove. And there's a lot of guys that have graduated to the NFL. Kyle Lewis not here. I think the defense will be still really good, even without Rasheem Biles. It's going to be hard to replace Rasheem Biles, if at all. But when you have guys like Cam Lindsey coming back, Braylon Lovelace coming back, who's extremely excited about, to where I think he's the next NFL linebacker out of Pitt. Jeremiah Marcelin, Jaden Bonsu, DeMarco Ward. We've got a number of guys, linebacker out of Purdue. A lot of guys you look at. And then you have the defensive line who looks really well, who looks really good to this point, and a lot of great guys, whether it's Jaden Moore, Zachary Crothers, Preston Lehman, Jimmy Scott. I mean, you got a number of guys. Isaiah Neal, he can play inside and outside. You've got a lot of things to work with, but certainly a lot of things to prove, which, by the way, as I brought up there, the final say here, to give you guys an update, we have received, and let me tell you, again, including myself, and I'm going to allow Eric and Harry to talk about it as well and their experience with it. The showing and the support from the Pitt meet and greet was something special. We had gotten a lot of calls from former Pitt players who are destined to be at this next one. And the good one tonight, guys, is that we are on the verge of securing a date. And that date, as of right now, without being 100% sure, is February 28th at Celebrations Bar, Banquet, and Grill. We are set to have the second Pitt meet and greet as we lead up to Pitt's, the Pitt spring ball and spring camp season. We are ready to have a second Pitt meet and greet. This one, the amount of people that have reached out to us said they want to be at the next one. They want one very quickly. They want one that's going to be a lot sooner than waiting until April before the spring game, because we're looking about having one before then, even down on the North Shore. So we are going to have the second Pitt meet and greet, and obviously former Pitt players there. Eric, number one, the second Pitt meet and greet coming up. I think we needed to secure the date for sure, but February 28th looks to be that date. Obviously, Matthew Good, let's go. I will be there. We have a number of people from Florida who will be there, from Charlotte who will be there, from the middle of the state, Harrisburg, they'll be there, Newcastle, all kinds of stuff. Eric, from what for how well it went, the first time, man, I'm pretty pumped about this second one. What are your thoughts on it?
I've said this to you guys, and I think I said to a few people at the first meet and greet. Kind of took a step back and was just looking at the room. When I started doing podcasting for fun, because I wanted to connect with more fans and I wanted to be able to share my insights and knowledge of the game and learn from everybody else, that was my vision. It's great that I was doing it with you guys, doing it with the Pitt Nation, the Panther Nation, and I thought it was just something that was on the cusp of building something special as we keep going with this. And I will, by the way, but for JJ's next show on Sunday night, by that time we will have things confirmed, and if it stays at the 28th or if it has to move or whatever. But right now we're looking at the 28th, but everything will be confirmed this week, so JJ can announce the official date and time next week or on his show on Sunday. So I'm looking forward to the second one, man. I mean, it was great. It was so much fun, and getting to meet everybody. So really not much else to say other than it was awesome.
Good for you guys out of Yinzerl. Good for you guys. I'll be in Nashville for work, but we'll try to get some family time, some family in the area to come out. Keep doing this. I'm so proud of you guys. Harry, as the second one comes up, as we really start to really finalize and secure a date, it's just great to meet great people, and the turnout was great. But just hearing the stories, seeing the former players show up, and then the response afterwards from so many former players. And there are some former players who will be there this time that, man, like had me when I was younger, in my teenage years, young teenage, like 14, 15 years old, when I watched Pitt football, will be at this event. And, former All-Americans will be at this event. As we get into the second one, Harry, what are your thoughts as we get there?
Well, the first was a success. I mean, we advertised for probably like a week and a half, 2 weeks, maybe less, about a week and a half, and we filled the room. And, I'm going to go back 35 years ago now. I'm pretty old. When I started the Pitt Gurus Panther page, first website ever covering Pitt recruiting, kind of bringing people together. That's why I did it. I wanted to galvanize the fan base, and I've always thought that Panther fans are family to me. And that day felt very family oriented. People were coming in. It's funny. People I didn't know, I felt like I already knew. A lot of great Pitt discussion. This is only going to grow. And I think we're also doing our part to try to galvanize the fan base by doing these. So come out, have a great time. Alex at Celebrations is more than a gracious host.
Yes.
Like I said, we're hoping to double the attendance this time and just kind of keep growing it. And just a great way to sit down with a beer after we're done, talk to people, chat about the game, chat about the program, build some excitement too, momentum heading into next football season. So come out. The first was awesome. We had so much fun. Definitely encourage you to come to the next one.
Couldn't agree more. And again, very thankful for everyone, who subscribes to the pod, who listens in, and the questions that come in. And man, it's just cool. It really was cool to hear the stories from so many different Pitt fans and why they look forward to something like this and why it's great to just talk about a little bit about Pitt football and really just go over, just Pitt in general, something that you love, man. And it's great to always have a Saturday where you get to have a little bit of time. And we'll see, maybe we have 3 hours this time where we get to sit down and get to chat a little bit, but very excited. Before we head off the airwaves here, Eric, as always, where can they find you, brother? Can't thank you enough for being on, as always. Where can they find you on all your socials?
Absolutely. On the Twitters, a.k.a. X, at Bird Cave. Give us a follow there. Give me a follow as well. And GB, the Uppity Yinzer, Bald Thunder. We got all these guys that make up the Bird Cave, which are on our YouTube channel. So just like you're doing here with JJ, hop on over there. Hit the like and subscribe button. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers as well. Again, we have a very young channel, and then we're trying to grow this just with some good Steeler talk. We actually did our live last night with some good talk about Mike McCarthy and all things Steelers. If you guys want to go back and revisit that, go on, take a look. Leave a comment, some questions, and we'll address it on the next show. But appreciate everybody, and JJ, it's always a pleasure to join.
Again, to second that, make sure you do subscribe to the Bird Cave. Great conversation last night. 4 guys that are on there that love to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, but more importantly, less emotion, more common sense. Very good conversation as I tuned in last night. Make sure you guys do that. Harry, where can they find you, brother?
Obviously, I rep Mike McCarthy and a lot of his stuff on Pittsburgh Sports Now. You can find me at @PittGuru on Twitter. A best-selling author when it comes to autism. You go to harrypaceris.com. You could find all the information on me. Super honored. The American Reporter put me on the same list as Oprah Winfrey for one of the top coaches for 2026. I field emails and calls from parents from around the world and try to counsel them when it comes to raising children with ASD or autism. So when he told me, I thought he was joking, and the article came out. It was a great honor, and it's been amazing. Awesome. So at @PittGuru and harrypaceris.com.
Guys, as always, thank you for coming on, man. I'll tell you what, an hour and a half. Thank you for really using your weekday, man. It's 10 o'clock. Cannot thank you guys for coming on and using your time, your precious time away from your kids, away from your families to join the show. And also, too, thank you for everyone tuning in to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Again, if you've not done so, we're on our road to 2,000 subscribers. Hit the like button down below right now. Hit the subscribe button. Share this with your friends as we hit a number of topics tonight. Plenty of people will love to watch this episode. And, of course, don't be a hoe. Share the show. Guys, we'll see you guys next time. Again, that's another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. As always and forever, hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt.
We'll see you guys next time.